same thing and not take over the entire universe. I was really surprised to see that there, and you don't have to pay for it, because you can just go to the up in my house.
There you go. I think you're just trying to offload your yard to this project, right?
I wouldn't get that to anybody.
Okay.
I love it, and but, different. Good morning. It's newsletter week, right?
It is.
I think I'm just gonna give a heads up to the hummingbirds and then write about something else, because they're on their way out.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're heading south.
yeah. That's what I saw. It was
I think that's an odd thing that, did you say, what day was it? That was,
someday in September.
yeah, it's their hummingbird day or whatever.
Yeah.
That's totally funny. Yeah, because they're gone. It's like, oh, let's remember the hummingbird. Yeah. Who's not here right now.
You are good to start. It is 9 o'clock. Just make sure your mics are on.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Welcome, and I'm here to call to order today's September PR&G meeting at 9 a.m. All right, and we have a quorum today, so we are all good.
We're
I
just
Just on the edges of one. Yeah.
Just missing Deb and Jen.
Okay. We don't have anyone asking for remote participation, so we will go ahead and work on the motion to pass the agenda as published. All in favor?
Someone needs to make the motion.
No.
I'll make a motion.
Make a motion?
Okay.
Second it, whatever.
Second, okay. Motion passed for the agenda. All right, and then we have the attached minutes from last month. Everybody had a chance to review it. Any comments, feedback?
I have no comments.
Okay. I make a motion to pass the agenda, or the previous minutes from the August meeting.
So moved. Is that,
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed.
There she is.
Good morning, Deb. Nope. Oh, that's gonna be fun.
Yeah, so many sorries there.
Right?
So that is Deb joining us at 9:01.
Oh, how sweet of you.
I do it all the time for free, but you get a little spoiled before you expect it.
Do we need to go back and do anything?
You know, you're
No,
good to
we've
keep
added-
going.
So Deb has joined, thank you. All right, public comment. We do not have anyone here or anyone signed up for public comment.
No public,
Awesome.
no comment.
So we will move forward. And the next up is any unfinished business, and we do not have anything on the agenda. So new business. The first item on the agenda is, under new business, is the discussion of the landscaping plan for the Village Hall Park. So Tyler had asked that we give feedback over the next two meetings for the recommendations that the landscaping proposal has for the Village Hall Park. My understanding is that they're beginning to do work on the planning. This will take place likely in the early part of next year to spring for plantings. So keeping that in mind, they would like to get the input from PR&G in the next 2 months to finalize the items for that. And I understand that in the previous projects, PR&G has had a lot of input and done some great things for like the roundabouts in the area around Village Hall Park. So I know there's a list. If you look on the attachment, it's page 22 in the PDF. It has both the shrubs and the ground covers. And I know, again, everyone welcome to give input, but before we do, maybe Christina, you can kind of help explain the variation we have here, shrubs and ground covers. It seems like there's a lot of various ground covers, to be included
Okay,
here.
so I don't know about ground covers.
Isn't that
This
here?
is down here. Oh, it does say
So-
ground covers.
so-
Okay, it's more the rain
Yeah,
garden.
right, but so I guess maybe before we go into that, Christina, you've got a better sense of the overall plan, right? We've got a rain garden, we've got, existing plans, maybe to help those of us who have not been involved with these kind of planning ideas, what we should be thinking of, besides just the details of the plants itself,
Right.
as we're looking at the overall design.
So it looks like they're keeping a lot of the plants that they can, which is really nice. And I know that Jen was on that team that was very careful to try to keep everything they could. But there's some areas that are, I guess for lack of a better word, just soggy. And so they're turning that into a rain garden, which is the best use of that. And so you'll see most of these things that it says ground cover, but it's really rain garden.
Okay.
That stuff at the bottom.
And Christina, can you kind of define, maybe
sorry.
explain rain gardens, so everyone's kind of on the
Okay.
same page
So
with that?
when you have an area that kind of holds water naturally, it's a good use of, you can plant plants around that to manage that better than just to have a big old mud puddle in the middle of your pretty park. So the plants that they put in here will be able to sit in water for days, they'll be fine with that, but they'll usually just soak it up and filter it. And so it will go out into, it looks like there's a pretty extensive system here on this plot to manage that water. But these plants, and there are hundreds of plants if you count those up. Everything down at the bottom half of that list is rain garden stuff. I mean, it's a big rain garden, and it's a lot of plants.
So when they describe ground cover, it's really the rain garden. It's
really
not
rain-
that they're putting ground
'cause
cover all over the park.
Some of these plants are 6 feet tall, so they're not ground cover. I mean, they're covering the ground, but not like you might imagine.
Okay.
So that's going to be really cool, and it's up front. So when you drive past this, you'll see that. I mean, you see, it looks like a patchwork quilt on the plan, which is really, really cool.
That's on Newtown Road or?
Yeah, on
okay.
Newtown, yeah. So,
So people would be walking by it once
On the loop,
walking by
okay.
and, yeah.
like a feature.
Oh, yeah, and it's gonna be, for most of the year, it's gonna be really colorful based on these plants, yeah. Then the other section, there's a lot of green space, obviously, and mulch space. And so that aside, there's a couple little areas where there's some viburnum and osmanthus on the, is there a way to pull up the plan that you can see on the screen? I can pull
I
it up on,
can, if you give me 1 second.
it'd just be easier, I can show you.
Technology decides to work today.
Because there are just a couple of areas that they've added plants to, although there are hundreds of plants, but still, they've added, and it's just easier to talk about where those little spots are.
Christina, you know, understanding that it's a rain garden and primarily for a wet area, right? So these are plants that are very tolerant of being wet, but,
Or dry. in most
well,
cases.
and I guess that was what my question was. In the case of a drought, are these things that are going to need some sort of irrigation as well? Or, you know, is that really going
We
to be
have
natural?
a really bad drought, whatever that means, right? Like, then maybe you'd need to water them a little bit. I mean, like.
But they don't need your typical, you know,
These are tough, these all are tough plants that
Yeah.
will tolerate, except, well, there's one on here that's not gonna handle it. And there's actually a couple that will be a little bit more picky. But like the solidago that we were talking about, the goldenrod we were talking about, honestly, it will grow in concrete.
Would you like a ledger pointer?
Um,
You look like you want a ledger
I don't really, but I'm afraid, now cats are gonna show up.
Now you tell me which page you want it on, okay?
Okay, hold on. Look. Not that one.
Okay,
Keep going. It's on toward the back, to the end.
okay.
One-
Sorry, I didn't know.
Keep going. More. You're gonna be looking for something, yeah, keep going. Almost there, because we're running out.
It's going a little slow for some reason.
It's okay. Isn't this fascinating? There we go. That's good enough. Right there. So that's the rain garden. I don't know what the scale on this is, but that thing's, well, oh, there's the building.
Pretty big.
That's a big freaking rain garden, okay? So that's awesome. But I think that this is either bringing water in. I'm not quite sure how all the aquatic stuff works. I'm not into
Should
it.
be diverting water away from
Yeah,
Newtown Road.
so
Okay, so
it
it's
comes
going
from
this
the
way.
road
It's
up.
going north.
Yeah,
Going this way, okay, cool. Oh, and speaking of, another thing I looked up last night.
Sorry.
Okay, this is almost exactly due north here. So we've got southern exposure on this thing. You couldn't ask for better if you are a sun-loving plant anyway. So this is awesome. There are trees there, and that one doesn't matter. So I think that's a tree there.
Those are existing, right?
Yeah, I think so.
It should be
I think they
existing.
had to take the other ones out for.
That was on a previous, that was on a
Yeah,
earlier
right.
page showing the tree plan.
So this is the ground cover area, right? And every one of these little sections is a different plant. And you can look them all up. It's gonna be amazing looking. This is a generator with some plants around it. And then here's another little garden. We'll talk about that in a minute. And then this and these areas here, and there's a couple little things there. And that's really it.
Yeah, is that the entrance to the path up there where you're
So
pointing?
I guess this is, like we're parked over here, so that's how you get
Kinda looks
in.
like it's.
One of the ways.
Okay,
I mean,
yeah.
I guess you could just drop yourself off.
Right. No, the one that goes towards Preserve. Is Isn't that the?
I don't, where's the other trail? Can you tell that? Is that, I can't tell, existing?
Oh, it's probably back there.
I believe it's up on that
Yeah,
next,
that's
it's up on the next property over.
Oh, okay, so I'm sure there's gonna, I would
Okay,
think there's gonna be a connection, but anyway,
Yeah.
so to me, that's how most people are gonna park and they're gonna come through here.
Gotcha, okay.
Okay, so, what is, oh, okay. So, let's start with something small, that's how I did it last night. This is a little generator, right? Well, not little. And these are Chinese hollies. And by the name, you can tell that I'm not a fan. They are Ilex cornuta, carissa, which is a nice plant, but it's not native. And I'm pulling too many of those things out of the woods to say that's a great idea. No, there's not a holly that really is. But the thing about it, so they get about 3 to 4 feet tall, 3 to 6 feet wide, that particular variety. So there are a couple of things that we could suggest instead. One is, so we have a lot of native hollies. Ilex that was just not one of them. So that, there's one called Ilex, so it's ILEX, glabra. Shamrock is a good version, and I think it's fairly available in a trade. And it gets about 3 to 5 feet tall and wide. So it's a little bit less wide, but, so you might need one extra one or something over there. That one's an evergreen. It's called inkberry. That's an evergreen.
Hey, Christina,
yes.
just one question I have. So, the timing of these things, and we talked about it being, like spring that we'd want to do planting and so forth.
Early spring.
But as far as these plants, are there particular times of availability during a year when you can get them or not get them? 'Cause-
Possibly. I mean, and honestly, I would start looking now,
Yeah.
right? And if we ended up having to babysit a few of them over the winter, that would be better than not getting them. But it just depends.
Because I
mean,
think it's nice, that we're paying this attention to detail in terms of what are the right ones, what are native versus invasive and stuff like that. But all of a sudden, we're going to get to the point where we actually have to buy them and
Well, so that's why I'm making a list of more than one thing.
okay.
So
So you got some backups
Oh,
there.
yeah.
Gotcha.
And, okay, let me step back on this one. One of the things that, I get that we're trying to hide something that's ugly right there, I guess. I mean, it's a generator. I don't know if it's ugly or not. I'm guessing it is. And it's kind of normal in our aesthetic, if you will, to put all one thing around some, we like to clump the same things together because we're just used to that that golf course mentality or whatever.
You can make it look more better.
Well, and that's with the evergreen part of it. So I do like the idea that it's evergreen or at least a really dense shrub, because some shrubs, even after they lose their leaves,
Is that what it looks like?
yeah. I mean, it's not got too bad prickles on it. Anyway, so I get why they want to do an evergreen, but another option is to do different types of plants around that. Yeah, it looks a little bit more chaotic, but look at the rain garden. That's not just one plant. So it's something to think about. I was trying to go with what's already there and not go too far off the path, but
Does that also impact the budget too? Like, is that the best place? I mean, I don't know how this has all been funded or priced out, but I mean, as far as variety, is it better to put variety someplace that's more, I don't know, visual or that?
I don't know, that's pretty visual.
That's right there, yeah.
Right? It's kind of right
Yeah.
there in the middle of it. So anyway, it's just things to think about since we're kind of at the beginning of this. So we need to decide, do we absolutely want to have an evergreen there? That if we can get it,
Yeah.
to John's point, if we can get it, that's a good idea. There's also another, just the regular American holly. There are short versions of that, because if you let that go, it'll be 25 feet tall. It's a tree. So we've got a couple of different versions there that we can go with that are evergreen. But another idea that I hadn't really thought of, it just came up on my search, is we could do a vine around the whole thing. We'd have to build something, Matt. We'd have to build something, but a coral honeysuckle like we have at the park right now is technically an evergreen. I mean, it loses some of its leaves, but it blooms. Mine has bloomed 11 months out of the year. Not a lot, but I've seen blooms on it in November. So that's, I mean, it's just something different, really easy to find those. And they have a bloom. So think about things that aren't just what my friend calls meatball shrubs, you know, across the way. So those are three things that are evergreen that would be good substitutes.
For the generator area.
For the generator, but I also have another list of things that are not evergreen. So if you're willing to go down that path, there's, I mean, I've got like 10 things.
Yeah. But I think if we're screening it, we'd want it evergreen, right? So that would make, yeah.
Well, like one of the things that's not an evergreen is also a holly, but it's called winterberry, and it has these red berries most of the fall until the birds eat them all off. But again, it's a pretty dense shrub, so when you're gonna still be able to see it a little bit, but not as much. So if we think evergreen is how we wanna go, then there's your three options there, that I gave you. That one, so that covers that. The next thing I looked at, well, any more questions about that particular?
Just one thing I wanted to know, because you did ask, but there will be a gravel trail that goes in that upper left-hand corner. It's just not shown on this map because of, yeah, so you can see where it comes in from the other property,
Oh, right there, look at that.
right? And then it cuts over to the right and connects to the parking lot.
Okay,
So, but
but it'll probably connect off of this somehow, off of this?
no, it'll actually connect off of the parking lot. So you either go
Oh,
up to the
okay,
trail.
So you have a choice. You're
It's
gonna go-
right around the next garden you're gonna talk about, Christina.
Yeah.
It's real
Good.
close to that lot.
So,
And that's because we didn't want to put more impervious area, so that part's just going to be gravel to connect over to the other one.
I'm all about that, okay.
Yeah.
Make sure you guys know if you're making actual changes. Make sure you actually say, like, if you're proposing to switch a plan out, just make sure you say that.
And Christina, you're gonna provide this list, so.
Yes,
I know,
yes.
I know that.
So
I
didn't type it all up because
Okay.
it's,
Yeah,
I mean, the next
okay.
page looks like that.
Gotcha.
And I didn't want to type all those Latin words.
But I think just like as far as the generator discussion, we've
Yeah,
all kind of.
I'll say generator and I'll put those three things
Right.
down there. And I can send you all a link to the NC Plant Toolbox so you can look at the plant itself.
Okay.
Okay, so generator, that, to me, that was the easy one. Okay, so the next thing then is this guy up here. And that doesn't look very big either, but then you gotta look at how big this is. So that is pink azaleas and daylilies. I'm trying not to make a face. Sorry. I'm a terrible poker player. I think, the more I thought about trying to find, two things that we could trade those out for, I thought, why just have that to be two things? One of the things that we've been talking about with Tyler is doing a butterfly garden here. I think I mentioned it to you last time. Doing a butterfly garden here. I don't know about the amount of sun and what the soil is like over there, and I'm not sure anybody knows right this minute. But that might be the perfect place for a butterfly garden. And it's big. I have a huge list of plants that would work so that we would get, we would probably start seeing blooms maybe even March, late March, depends on the weather, all the way up through first frost. First frost. So it could be that if we wanted to do that. One of the things with the monarch mayor thing, is to put some milkweed on this property somewhere. So that is kind of ready-made, right? That area up there, if it gets sun. If it doesn't get sun, then we need to think about something
Okay.
else.
But what you're saying is, I think this is a good idea, making it more purposeful, kind of intentional with the butterflies or
Yeah.
sensory or whatever we're gonna do. If we have other opportunities
Yeah.
in the garden versus just putting two things that look.
Right.
Pretty.
And those would look fine, but, yeah, pink and yellow. And I didn't really see another spot there's not another spot that is laid out that we could put plants in, like maybe here. I guess we could add some tuberose, some milkweed here.
That's
And
kind of
I-
almost against the natural area, right?
Right,
Yeah.
but if it
It's a
gets
good
enough
place to-
sun,
yes,
it would be
yeah.
fine. But like underneath these shrubs. But anyway, I thought this was a good spot for that. If that's not the way we want to go, And then I would put probably 10 different kind of plants. It would be more like this rain garden kind of look to it.
Like tying them together.
Yeah, but not the same plants.
But not.
Yeah, because these are super tall. So
And
this is
I-
almost screening more than anything.
And I think from a sun perspective, you've got the parking lot on the right-hand side of it where there's no trees or anything
Right.
really, so,
I
you know.
think it might be okay
It
sun-wise.
should get a decent amount of sun
Yeah,
there.
well, then it'll be more of a soil question. And I know that landscape architects are just gonna bring in soil, but in the end, you still have the subsoil. The roots are still going down there, so it's still, if that's a wet spot, then we're gonna put slightly different plants in it than if it's a dry spot, than if it's none of those things. Because I don't wanna throw stuff out here and then somebody's gotta go water it all the time, or we have to put in irrigation.
Yes,
And
yes, we don't, so we're not having irrigation
I
in
don't
this
think
park?
so.
Is that not part
No,
of it?
there is some irrigation right immediately around
Like the ones right
village hall.
along the foundation?
Yeah,
of the-
but I think our intent is to get away without having to do it in the other areas.
And again, with any planting, but particularly with native plants, if they're native and they're properly situated, I mean, we put wet-loving plants in wet areas and dry-loving plants in dry areas. We were smart that way. Then the first year, yeah, you gotta pay it attention. And honestly, I think we have some scout groups and some high schoolers that could help us with that kind of thing, if that's what we really need to do. Or anybody can go water a plant. It's pretty straightforward, you just gotta remember to do it. But the first year, we gotta do that, and after that, barring, some horrible 7-year drought that we know can happen, they will be pretty good. They'll be all right. So, I like that for the butterfly garden.
Christina, how well, I mean, I guess depending on the plants, because that's kind of close to the entrance where, I think the foundation plants here look very well managed. Is that going to become something that you can also kind of keep kind of contained, because it's kind of right in front of the entranceway too, right?
You can make it as busy or as
And does it require a lot of?
meatball as you want.
Yeah, as far as overall maintenance and pruning, because if it's kind of visible too, right? So
Right,
it
so-
doesn't become overgrown and become.
One of the things that I put down here, and it's it's not how we did a foundation plants. And I would like to talk to Jen about it. But there are 2 different ways to do, well, more than 2 different ways. But one of the ways that you can do a planting like this for a butterfly garden is you don't put mulch down, you put green mulch, which is lower growing plants that grow out like this, that are kind of flat. And they might shoot up a flower here, but that's gone pretty quickly. So they're covering the ground. You don't ever see any ground, and then your other plants come up through. That's once it's, been there a couple of years. The system works pretty well. You just have to buy the right plant. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've got 5 different ones on my list that I have used all of these. Things like violets.
For ground cover.
Yeah, for ground cover. Everybody pulls those out of their lawn. They're really great to put in your flower beds because they will cover an area if they're happy. And then this time of year, they look kind of icky, but you wouldn't see them anyway because all the other plants are on
So
top
you
of
would
it.
pick one of the 5 for the ground cover, and then you would have the butterfly bushes mixed in.
Well, not butterfly bushes.
Well,
right.
yeah.
Yeah, so I would.
Bushes that attract butterflies.
Yeah,
Yes, exactly.
yeah.
Bushes
So
that attract
I would
butterflies.
suggest more than one thing of each. So if we want a longer, an extended season, we're gonna want some early spring plants, we're gonna want some later spring, so there's probably 5 or 8 different seasons in there for plants. And I did hear somebody from Britain say about our gardens here that she was amazed at how quickly things bloom and are gone. And where she's from, they bloom for like 2 months. And I'm like, well, you're spoiled.
Fried.
Yeah,
Okay,
that doesn't work.
right.
So
Okay.
we would need a lot of different plants there if we can manage that. That would look more like the rain garden and less like the 2 stripes that we have now. So if that is acceptable, I can make a list of that, say maybe
And then
10 plants.
within there too, will there be, I mean, I don't know if you're going to keep the azaleas, but some sort of evergreen, so in the the winter months or something, we'll have something there? It won't
So it's a
just be-
really good point. So I do think a shrubby kind of something in there would be nice. But here's the thing about native plantings, and if we put, especially if we put some grasses in there too, which they did in the rain garden, you don't cut those down in September. You cut them down right before they start producing again in late February, early March. So grasses particularly are absolutely gorgeous all winter long. I can show you pictures of my backyard if you want to see it. and they're rustly, and the birds are out there eating the seeds off of them, not all of them though, but anyway, they eat the seeds, and it can look really nice even in the dead of winter. Then you cut that back down, and you'll have like a
So-
2-week time in there that it kind of looks,
So you're thinking
Dead.
grasses more than the evergreens in that space?
maybe, yeah.
Okay.
And thank you for that, because I didn't really put grasses on here, but it would tie it back into the rain garden. So if you guys are okay with that, I will make a list.
Yeah, I like the idea of the butterfly garden and I mean, I guess you could even make a distinction at some point too. Is it a space that, like, I mean, obviously you can see them, but, some people might want to walk through, it's part of the path, right? So you're going to
Right,
walk through it
right.
and see it, so it's a
Yeah.
little more.
Well, and that's just something with the, community that we're going to be trying to promote. So
Right.
that HOA, so it'll be in a very visible area where people can see what something like that looks like.
Yeah, and I'd like to use it for that, because it's a lot bigger than a mailbox garden or whatever we're talking about doing. But
Is there space for benches there? where
Yeah, that's
people
what I was
could
wondering.
sit?
they can sit in their car in that one parking space. No.
With the engine running, so you
Yeah.
can stay
Oh,
cool.
God.
I'm just kidding.
You just killed all the bees. Yeah, great, that would be awesome.
No, but I like the idea that you said, like, you come and you enjoy it too, or, I mean, I guess, or.
Just walk, running through it.
Yeah, it's kind of intentional, right?
Yeah, intentional, yes. The other thing, before we get to, no, that was that big one. Before we get to this thing, these guys here, those are viburnum and osmanthus. And if you, viburnums are native. They're a shrub. They're deciduous though, so they're gonna lose their leaves. But they've got a really nice look to them. I mean, they're kind of look like tiny trees. Osmanthus, they may be an evergreen.
Are those ones that smell?
They smell
Yes.
amazing. Now, they are not native. It's the only thing on here that I gave a pass on because they're on my list of I can't say no to them. They smell crazy good. And like if you're over here, you will be able to smell them. That's what's crazy about
I'm
that.
pretty sure they're evergreen, because I have some of those, yeah.
Why do I not know this? Because mine are in this screen of all kinds of things. Anyway, so I think these things on the ends and right there are the osmanthus. So they're just the bomb. And if we get the right kind, they'll bloom twice. So you'll get a spring smell and a fall
The
one.
sweet smell.
It is the best. It's better even than magnolias. But underneath all of this, we could still add some lower growing Asclepias tuberosa, which is the orange milkweed, if the sun is there. So we could add some more milkweed across, was this little area here is not enough. This and this, I mean, I would be stuffing that plant anywhere I could put it, if it looks okay to do that, because these will get tall. I forget, nudum, that says 18 inches. I think it gets way bigger than that. I'll go look that up, because that seems short. I think that's an 18-inch height plant, because why would you want this to be just 18 inches tall? I don't think that's right. I didn't look that up. Okay. I don't see anywhere else that
So,
there's.
just a question on the viburnum. I mean, there are some viburnums that are also evergreen too, right? Like the Chenda viburnums. I'm thinking more of a bush or a shrub,
I
but
think
they're
those
different.
might be Asian, though.
Okay, are
Yeah.
they? I'm not sure.
Pretty sure that all of our native ones, but
Okay.
I can look.
But again, because it didn't sound like you were thrilled with those. Is there anything else that might be a different?
Oh, for the viburnum?
Yes.
Oh, no, I like
Oh, you
them.
like them?
Yeah, oh,
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
They're just not, they're not sexy. I mean, they're pretty, though. I mean, they're gonna have a flower on them in the spring, and that's kind of the end of that.
Okay. They
And,
said,
but it's a pretty looking
Okay.
plant. I'll check though, let's see, what am I trying to, evergreen, but I don't think so. Now, the advantage of all of these native plants here is that, because all of this is native, right? I think, I hope if there's any tree of heaven in there, we're cutting it out. And if there's any privet, I'm not the one that has to cut it out. And so what this ends up being, except for all that turf grass, is that it ends up being a haven for wildlife. And I think we will see a lot more butterflies and bees and weird wasps and all that stuff that we see at the park garden. I mean, there's some crazy flying stuff over there. Anyway, so it extends this with more what are called forbs, more blooming plants that'll bring in the bugs. And that sounds like a crazy thing, that you would want to bring bugs. But
Do we have plans to put in like trees like that where you could put lights on them for
And where would you,
Christmas time?
where would
Just
you
to-
put, yeah, because I don't think she's, what are, is that Thuja? Yeah. So those get super, super big.
Do they?
Like, yeah, like 50 feet tall. Yeah. And I don't know, are there any plans, does anybody know, to put some kind of Christmas tree kind of thingy looking out here? I would think that would be more over there.
Like a tree, like a,
Tree that you could put lights on.
I mean, we've been doing one on the corner over here
Yeah,
every year.
Yeah.
like over there.
I don't know about anything on that side of the building.
Yeah. Because all of these are existing trees. They're actually thinning them out, I think. So, any questions about Allah's little gardens there? Because then we'll do this, the ground cover. I didn't even notice it said that. So the rain garden.
we covered a lot of ground. I was like, geez.
Yeah, it's covering ground. It's covering the air too.
I was like,
So I think it's really cool the way they did the patchwork quilt of it all there. That is going to be amazing looking. If you've seen the little garden that I did at the other roundabout, it's going to be like that on steroids, except they've grouped their plants together, where I didn't. I just threw them all out there. So it's going to be less meadowy and more, here's where all the Rebecca is, and here's where all the goldenrod is, and here, it'll be more intentional. It's actually more.
And,
there-
and
is there-
just one thing, and it just came to mind, there may be some irrigation available, because I recall, and I think it was Andy, when we were looking at these plans, but if you look at kind of the cistern where it's thicker, next to the rain garden,
Oh, right here, yeah.
yep, and then you see that little black dot just to the left of where the cistern goes from, that right there, I believe, says irrigation pump.
Well,
So that if we need to take advantage of that water that's in that cistern,
if we need to water something, not that it's going to start spraying the world.
no.
Because
Correct.
nothing makes me well, no, that's.
No, that would just be a
It's
pump
raining and the
so that there,
irrigation-
so that there is
Yeah.
irrigation available, yeah.
Okay, so the ability to water, not from the back of my truck in a box. of
Yeah,
water.
and I don't know if we even kind of, built in the costs of irrigation and stuff, but we thought since we're doing that, let's just have it in place so that if we need it in the future or
Well,
something
yeah, you've
like
got a
that.
cistern full of water. You might
Correct.
as well use it.
Yeah,
if you
so
need
we
it.
were trying to think ahead,
Yeah.
and I kind of remembered that and then noticed
Cool,
it on the
okay.
plan as I was looking
Okay,
at
well,
it.
that's good to know, because we might need that. And again, when it's 100 degrees for 7 days in a row, 10 days in a row, things tend to want a little water, no matter how tough they are.
Yeah.
So all the plants in here, I didn't have any problem with, except there's more daylilies, and so there's plenty of things that we can change for that. But there's also Solidago canadensis, and as much as I like goldenrod, and I probably like it more than most people, that stuff will get 10 feet tall, I'm not joking. It'll get 10 feet tall at my house. I mean, not just on the side of the roads. And it's in here somewhere, I don't remember which number it is. It would be gorgeous until this whole thing had turned to Solidago, and it will do that. So I've got 3 different other versions of Solidago that are a little shorter and much better behaved.
okay, so it doesn't take over the rain garden,
Yeah,
is what you're saying.
because, I mean, all of this, it's gonna look like this for a little while, and then it's all gonna start moving around, because most of these are self-seeders. They're gonna put themselves wherever they want to, so enjoy it while it's
Oh.
like this, and then it's gonna start looking like however it wants to, unless y'all wanna go move those things back.
And here I was gonna suggest, do we put little labels out there so we can educate folks, but it doesn't sound like that would last them
Well,
very long.
but you can.
But a thought was maybe there's some education around, this is a rain garden. I mean, I know you don't have to put a plaque, but just something that, hey, this is beautiful, this is something,
And
we
it's
can-
useful.
And useful, and people can identify what those plants are, because we've picked things that work well in this area.
But the way to do that is, on your
On-
little poster
Yes,
there, is say, this is a rain garden and this is what it's for, but it's also a pollinator garden, because it will be based on these plants. But then you can put pictures of the plants
That's what I think
and
would be
say, this thing
educational,
that
right?
is this
Yeah.
crazy color of purple, that is ironweed. You'll never miss it once you see it. And they'll find it in there somewhere in the fall.
Okay, that's an idea, but I just thought if you're putting this much effort and it's this beautiful patchwork, we should be educating folks on what we have.
100%.
Even in the butterfly garden too, again, it's kind of
Yes.
like, come here and then you understand what grows in Marvin and you can take it home to your.
Exactly.
Well, don't pick it, but you can go buy your own and put it in.
Yeah, well, and we'll have seeds for, at some point, maybe that is, we get to do the little seed packs that
That's
are
kinda
that
fun.
garden and. yeah.
Propagating the village park. yeah.
Exactly, exactly. So I will make a list of just that couple of things there that I would change, just to keep us from not having a solid-ego garden. And then I'll make a list on these other spots, and it'll be not 400 things. I won't do that to you. But there are tons of options. To John's point, I'll put a few things in here that, I'll mark the ones that we gotta have that. Like, we've gotta have the Asclepias tuberosa, or in the other one, swamp milkweed. Otherwise, we don't have a monarch garden, right? But the rest of them depends on what we can find.
Okay.
And it depends on what the soil is like. Because again, if it's wet or dry or medium, then that will change what we add.
And who's going to determine that? The landscaping group? I mean, I know you have the ability, but who's going to go
Well,
out and
no,
assess the soil
they
for
gotta
us?
do some, they gotta do some digging
Yes.
and, get to that point, and then we can go look at it, I guess. They may have a feel for it, it's worth asking. But there's no point in putting something that wants
Right.
to be dry in a wet spot and vice versa. We'll
Yeah,
just be
and-
wasting plants.
One of the things we learned with the roundabouts is until you see what happens after construction, you don't know what you're working with. Because when we did our first roundabout and we're planting the plantings and things like that, I mean, that dirt, it was like from the planet Mars. And it had all sorts of junk in it
Oh,
and stuff like that.
yeah.
And, so, yes, the plans, you want to have everything in place, but you're really not going to know what you're dealing with kind of until you get into the construction.
And, but again, to your point, does that put you up against a wall finding
find
plants?
them, yeah.
Correct.
Because if that happens in April, we're kind of screwed, because we needed to have had all those plants scheduled by then. We might not have picked them up, but we've got them ordered. And again, to your point about plants, I do know a couple of locations that we can get smaller plants, plugs. They'll be cheaper, they'll be tougher. They won't look great the first year, but they'll be okay. And they're just all around a good idea there to get plugs. But they don't have the biggest variety. They mostly do restoration work, so this is not a stream restoration.
Yeah.
But a lot of these plants that were already spec'd on here, Mellow Marsh has them. And there are other places that have other options, so.
Okay.
But it'll be kind of pulling from a couple of different places to
Just
get
to
them.
understand, because I think the roundabout, and since I wasn't part of this, did you all plant it, or are we planning to have support to do the plantings, or what's the intent here for these?
Yeah, what's the intent here? Because we didn't plant the roundabout.
Oh, you didn't,
I
okay.
mean, I think those guys.
Oh, okay.
Austin, I don't recall, but I think the planting and stuff like that would eventually be done by our public works. Didn't we have that
Go back to
discussion?
the full question, I'm sorry.
For this garden.
For
who's
these
planting?
gardens that we're talking about here?
We're doing all the plantings in-house, yes.
Yeah, so the plantings we're doing in-house, so we'll have more control over that.
Okay.
It's not the contractor just doing it,
Okay.
it'll be Matt and his team,
But they'll take any help they can get. I'll bet.
Correct.
Okay. Okay.
And so, I mean, I think it's an opportunity to have a really nice couple of volunteer days.
That's what I thought would
Correct.
be,
Yeah.
in education and all, we can make it more of, not just do the work, but learn about a rain garden, learn about a butterfly
Exactly.
garden.
And I would even separate them up like that and try to do them on different
That would
days,
be
just
nice.
because you probably need to, but because a rain garden is a very different thing than a pollinator, well, a rain garden is a pollinator garden, but the pollinator garden by itself back there, the butterfly garden, that can wrap into our monarch mayor thing, and so many ways that we can cross-market this.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's something
And
we can
get
do
some
as far
free
as some planning. So I think right now, the immediate ask was to get feedback on the plants, and Christina, you've done an excellent job.
Well, I've
And-
got more than you want.
Well, it's a good
So
place to
just,
start.
just for the record, the
Right.
board is good with Christina's notes, like you guys concur with what she's saying, and that we'll
Correct.
pass these notes on to Tyler.
That's right. And then we have one more meeting in the October meeting, we'll get, final feedback. And
Yeah.
solicit-
So I'll write this up and send it to
Yeah,
everybody.
that'd be great. And then Jen can
and
give
Tyler.
some input too, and then Tyler will have that. And then I think in our next meeting with Tyler, we'll also want to make sure timing-wise too, if we approve those, who's going to start the purchasing or identification, so we don't wait until December and be too late. So I think,
But I also, again, to your point, I want to always have a couple of backups, because just because we want doesn't mean there is. So,
Right.
you know.
okay.
And there's plenty of other things.
Okay.
You know, I got a list of 20
Yeah.
plans.
And then maybe our Austin, just some other notes to put in there is, one, the idea that, we could consider a planting day or some planting volunteer days in the future when we do this. This isn't the topic here, but that's part of the
Yes.
idea, is the planting to get community involvement. And I also like the idea of the education too, so maybe that's another action item for us to follow up. Signage or some education around the butterfly garden and the rain garden too.
And I wonder if we can even, and this is a Tyler question probably, tap into the guys who developed this plan and see if one of their engineers would come and talk to a group of people about the rain garden and how this all worked. Because this is not the hole I dug in my front yard and threw some plants that are super tough in and hope for the best. This is a really nicely engineered piece of work here. And I would like to hear more about it myself, but as a huge opportunity to learn more about a rain garden in this aspect, but, what does that mean at your house? Because most people have a spot.
Right.
Yeah,
Maybe not that big.
especially all the people around Marvin that live near creeks, things like that, where
Exactly.
when we have these, gully washers, they have areas that, they have to address. And,
Yeah.
this is one way to address it more naturally than just putting in all sorts of drains or other type things.
Which don't always work
Yeah,
either.
I
So,
think
and you have to replace, anyway, so this is a great
Yes.
educational, that one may be more even than
The
the other.
butterfly. Yeah, I like that idea. Then it's also community awareness and maybe partnering with the habitat builders too.
Absolutely, of course, we're always there.
I know.
Are
Okay.
willing to be
But
there.
again, thank you for
No,
all your
cool.
input and.
Well, I
and-
couldn't not do it. I mean, I had to.
Well, we needed that too, but it was good feedback. And thanks, I think it was helpful to walk through the,
Yeah.
so we all can picture that.
Well,
too.
because it's overwhelming when you first look at this, especially if you're not used to looking at plans. There's so many layers at this point. So anyway, you can pick out the spots. It makes sense.
All right, I think we are finished on that one, but again, next October, next month in October.
Not next
We
October.
will go through the finalizing the list for Tyler and move forward.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Austin.
I do want you to know that there is a holly called Ilex vomitoria. That is its
Vomitoria,
real
okay.
name.
We're not getting that one.
I mean, they did not have a good marketing group. It's really pretty.
It
plant.
actually spits its seeds.
It spits it. It really doesn't. It's a pretty little plant. We've got it all over the park. It does jump ship though, because I find it in the woods all the time. So maybe it was there originally, but I don't think so.
Sometimes Latin words aren't pretty.
They really aren't. Anyway.
Okay, and next topic to follow, kind of in line with
I
the
know,
plant
more
discussion, but I'm
plants.
excited about this one too, was the idea of a plant exchange event. And we talked about this last month, the idea, a lot of communities do this as an opportunity for people to either help propagate either plants that they have in their existing gardens, whether they have seeds to share, but also it's kind of a way to interact with other gardeners in the area. So I thought that would be a nice event to propose to having at the town park in October. One thought was to tie it to Arbor Day, but again, just really an open session where people bring up what they have in their yard and they switch and swap plants. And I just think it's an opportunity to kind of identify other gardeners. We've got a good folks who do the raised, the garden beds,
Oh, yeah,
in
yeah,
that area, but I think there's a lot of other folks in different neighborhoods who would be interested to network, so.
And it's a great way for new gardeners to learn a lot and to find that person that you got their email address, and now every time you have a question, you're going to ask them. That's the best part of the
Right.
whole thing.
So
And
Christina.
a free plant.
Right, we thought maybe the October date of, was it Columbus Day or not, that weekend, not that
Are we
date,
still
but-
doing the 11th for Arbor Day, or we haven't settled that?
You guys haven't finalized that. They haven't finalized that yet, but that is still the plan of my knowledge.
Okay.
Should be, should still
And
be
what was
that
the
same.
And is
plan
that
for
the right time, like when you're splitting bulbs and all of that stuff?
It's the right time for some things.
Yeah.
For example, lantana and grasses, they are warm, or the tall grasses that we have are warm season, so you don't touch them that time of year. They're a spring thing. But pretty much everything else is a good time to divide it. And I think some people do, I don't know much about bulbs, but I think some people do those once the leaves die off, so they've already pulled those up and divided them, or done whatever they wanted to back in the spring. So to that point, one of my thoughts was we do this more than once a year, but let's do the first one and see
See how that goes?
If it's just me and you sitting there talking, that's maybe a different
That's it, yeah,
thing.
right, right. And I guess even just people can pull up things like, like you've got like things like lambs here that you can keep pulling apart. So it's not just,
Yes.
separating, but just
I
things that are overgrowing. You
Right,
can bring
right,
and
right.
put in
Well-
buckets and people can take.
Right, right. So-
Maybe just to help people as we advertise it,
Tell them what to do.
well,
Ideas.
if you just make a list of what are the appropriate types of things to do at this time of year.
Yeah,
you know?
it's a good point. And to say, so not only, not that many people have tall grass laying around, but stuff to leave alone, because I've learned the hard way about lantana. Mary Sipe is the one who taught me that one. She said, do not be planting the lantana. We planted some in one of the roundabouts in the fall, and not one bit of it made it. So that's
Okay.
how that goes. But anyway, but the things like, to that point, but I think we would take vegetable stuff, seeds, vegetables,
Okay.
houseplants,
Yeah.
because for some people, that's their entry.
Yeah,
It's like,
I
I
think-
got a spider plant, it's
Yeah,
alive.
So we can just, yep.
Yeah.
All right, so I guess, so Christina, you and I maybe can help put together the information of what the ask is, the timing, and then how are we going to communicate that out either through the normal communications that we do on a monthly basis? So I guess going back to the date, I think the thought was Arbor Day. Is there something that was going to be done for Arbor Day, or just the idea that it's Arbor Day and we're going to?
Just one other question.
Yeah.
It says plant exchange event, but that's also the time that a lot of seeds are available.
Yeah, so I think it
So
should
you
be.
would say plant
Yeah.
and seed
Plant and seed.
exchange?
I think it should be seeds too.
Okay, plant and seeds, and then we can expand on, like you said, house plants and, outdoor, indoor.
And my only issue is I don't want to see any privets and ivy and all that crap. So I think we have to make a note that there are no invasives, and here's the link to the NC Invasive Plant Council.
You're
And
not-
you can figure this out, and they're in your yard and you know it.
Okay,
Do
so-
not bring me some English ivy.
So mostly make a list of ideas of what you can
Yeah,
bring,
of
and then
course,
in the
of
bottom,
course.
just, no, please no invasives and
Yeah.
that.
But if
that
you
would
say
be
no
good.
invasive, then you get what does that
Yeah,
even
yeah,
mean?
yeah.
So a link that let the
Christina's going to stop you at the door, right? She's going
not having it in there.
Exactly.
Honestly,
Okay.
it's just more seeds to pull up later.
So usually those are kind of drop-in events, they're kind of a couple hours in the
Yeah.
morning, so we're thinking.
Yeah, I would say like 2 to 3 hours.
Yeah.
I would do two.
And we'll use the barn, I think is the idea, that we could
If
use
we
that
can.
space and put some tables up and just let folks come and go, so.
Yeah. you could-
If we have a specific date, you'll just want to get with Tyler to make sure that the
Right.
timing is,
We were
maybe
gonna
like,
try to tie it to the Arbor Day thing if there was a thing.
yeah.
But if there's not, then we're
Yeah.
more,
Weren't we thinking it was going to be the 10th or the 11th? I know you and I had some emails on that, too.
is the 11th?
The 11th, was it Saturday? Saturday.
No, it would be a Saturday or Sunday, either one.
Yep, so Saturday morning, I thought that was somewhere in the.
Yeah, I've got Arbor Day on the 11th.
Okay, so proposing Saturday, the 11th of October, and then when would we need to get this published? I mean, when would you need that to, is it for the newsletter, or would it just be like a separate blast?
Are you talking about the plant exchange event or Arbor Day?
The plant exchange, to put that out.
We haven't even announced the Arbor Day yet, so we would probably just do them at the same time. If
Okay.
that's something that you nail down. I think we're planning a proclamation for the Arbor Day. I want to say maybe during the September regular meeting. So we could start advertising that. If you guys decide at the September meeting, okay, definitely, we're going to do a plant exchange event, here are the details, we can absolutely just merge that into the
Okay.
promotion.
Okay, and if it has to be later, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
I'd also like to see if I can get a master gardener to show
Yeah.
up. For Ask a Master Gardener, and they've got their little sign and all.
Okay, so do you think we have enough time? Well, that's like 6 weeks from now, Christina, so I
I
think.
think we just start promoting it on social media, and it's, I've got enough things to keep people happy, and they do not need to share anything with me. I don't need.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be an exchange.
It's not really
It can be
it's
a
a
one-way. Yeah, it's a gift.
Here's some plants.
Okay.
And I have learned that when you offer free plants, you do get some attention. Free poplar trees are very popular, so who knew?
Okay,
Yeah, so
all right.
maybe we'll get some attention off of that.
So, sounds like the discussion around this is we want to move forward with the plant seed exchange swap, whatever we want to call it. We'll
Yes.
define a little bit more a list of what to do so folks know what to bring and what not to bring. We're going to target it for October 11th, I'd say at the morning timeframe. We were thinking maybe, what would you say, 10 to 12? What's a good window, or 9 to 11?
Not any more earlier than 10, because I have to work tonight.
So we'll have this again on your agenda at the next meeting, okay?
Well, yeah, because
But we will need to-
we're gonna need to do it before, because that's like the week before, so we'll put it on the agenda again for next week, because in October.
Oh, yeah,
that's-
it's already September,
It's,
gosh.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's gonna be 4 days before, so
Yeah.
we'll just need to finish up the details. I mean, is everyone comfortable that Christina and I can kind of just, you know, fine tune it, but we're gonna target the October 11th.
We'll just give it a shot, and
Morning.
if it doesn't, nothing venture, nothing gain, right, I
Exactly.
guess?
And there's tables and such that we can use
They're all
in
in
the
there.
barn, and we just,
Yeah.
I'll follow up with Tyler to make sure there's nothing else scheduled at that time, and
Yeah, that's what, we just need to make sure that the barn's available.
Yeah.
And if it's not, then we move it to
we
a
move it
different
to
day.
Sunday,
No big
yeah.
deal.
Okay,
Yeah, the barn is very well equipped. It'll be
Excellent.
easy to do.
okay. And that's all on the topic there, and
And
we'll
I think that
welcome-
we first contact the people who have community garden shares.
Yes,
and
that, I
they'll
was gonna
show
say, do you have, you obviously have a list of folks who are in the community garden, and then through each different HOAs, we can also
And I'll
promote that
shoot it out
too.
to the master gardeners as well, and habitat builders people, and, yeah, all that. We might
So
have
you,
more than
so you
one.
guys will take that and run with it,
We are
and then
gonna
just
run
coordinate with Tyler when he's back.
And I am
Yes.
not taking any plants home.
You know
She
you
says
will.
that now, right?
No,
And then
you
you'll
know
see
you
her taking
will.
that little cardboard box out with her.
I will throw them in, no, I won't, I'll compost them.
Okay, all right, I think that's it for our new business items then. Moving forward, the event.
Let's talk about plants some more, no.
Yeah, the event planning report without Tyler here, do we have anything to?
Not to my knowledge.
We
He-
just put
he
stuff
did
on his schedule.
Okay.
October 24th.
Trick or treat October 24th,
Okay.
Friday, 5 to, is it 5:30 to 8:30?
to 8
Or 5 to 8,
usually.
yeah. No movie this year. It's going to focus on trick or treating the entire time. Just
Focus on candy.
Well, because there's so many children. He rescheduled the car show that was planned for November 8th. I think he pushed it off a week to November 15th. Just for scheduling purposes. I'll double check dates here. Yes.
Yeah.
November 15th, that's, I think, 8 to 10 a.m. at the park. The last one was very successful, so.
I
glad
know
to
it
do that
was,
one
but
again.
I'm just 8 o'clock, that's why I just.
And just one thing, special thank you to Christina manning the hot dogs at National Night Out. But for, even though the,
Only dropped 3.
even though the date got moved and everything, there was still a lot of people, a lot of kids there. It was a really good event. A lot of the, our sheriff's deputies, and they had the SWAT team and the dogs and all sorts of stuff, fire, and, really gives the community a good opportunity to interact and also say thank you to the men and people in law enforcement and the fire department, and, staff did a great job, helping to put that together.
And the weather
We had volunteers, which we always get volunteers that, who
Young
were the
Men's
volunteers
Service
from?
League.
I'm sorry, I wasn't there. I was at a conference. and-
Oh,
It was a Young Men's Service League,
Yeah.
right? Is that
Yeah,
what they're
the
called?
one, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, they do I mean, there's so many of them. you
yeah,
just don't
they
even
did a
feel like
great
you-
job,
Yeah,
but,
they do a great job.
yeah, but, thank you.
I know that Jen was over there making the hot dogs too, and she is a vegetarian, so.
No.
she was making
She did a
the
good
hot
job with
dogs for
touching
me,
the hot dog.
and she did not get sick. So, yeah.
No, that was a great event. I was going to also comment too, and just for recognition, is the leftover food that was, we
Oh,
had the
yes.
hot dogs, buns, and cookies. There's an organization that I'm a part of called Feeding Charlotte, where they take and repurpose food that's been prepared or can be redistributed. So we were able to take it to a community program in Union County for any of the leftover hot dogs and hamburgers. And just kind of as a note, we did that previously with the 5K when we had leftover
That's
drinks and
fantastic.
granola bars and such. So I think that's something in future community events, we have a place to take anything that's left over and redistribute it, so.
That is so
We
good.
have an event, a fundraiser coming up at
Oh,
Fire Department.
okay, let me know, yes, that'd be great. Well, Feeding Charlotte is also doing a golf event there too. I don't know if that's the same. Okay, but you and I should connect, yep.
Helping with it. I'm
Oh,
with them.
okay, great.
And they need drivers.
Yeah, no, I'm on, let's talk afterwards, good. But
You're-
anyway, just to let you know, the food that we had that was left over was well served in the community.
Your only other event notes is Friendship Tree will be in November. More details on that to come. Tree lighting in first weekend in December, same as we normally do. More details to come.
How is that even possible?
This year is going by so fast.
Oh, you know what that's a sign of? Okay.
But I think it's also a good recognition, there's a lot of good community events. I mean, every month there's something to keep in front of
No, that's
folks
true.
out here,
Yep.
which is excellent, so.
Yeah.
Tyler's keeping busy. And all of
Keeping
us,
us busy.
and all of us, yeah, so.
Fueling us with candy.
Anything else on your end from events? You have a tree walk coming up?
Yeah, I had a tree,
Not tree
me,
walk, a park.
No, it is kind of a tree walk. On the 13th of September, sorry. We've got a walk through the park, but we're going to focus on trees this time. So it's part of our family engagement series. When I say our, I mean Habitat Builders. It will be led by one of their members who's very good with educational kind of things, especially with kids. But let's face it, we all learn pretty well when kids are learning. Adults pretty much learn some stuff too. So we're going to talk about trees, their importance in the environment. Trees Union is going to be there with us. I'm not entirely sure which part of their board will be there, but they'll talk a little bit about trees too. We'll talk about our little tiny tree farm. But then we're going to just walk around and look at trees and try to learn which one's which and why that's important and, just tree stuff. It'll be good. And it's a good time to start talking about planting trees because that starts kind of the end of October around here. So that's why Arbor Day is a good time to have it in October. So that's coming up. And then we've got a talk on bats in Waxhaw on the 30th of September, and a talk about coyotes in October on the 21st, I was right, on the 21st of October at Wesley Chapel at their village hall. So if you're interested in doing a little traveling, you can learn about bats and coyotes.
So for something like the tree walk coming up, it's because it's in the park itself. Is there anywhere in the park that we can advertise that to so that folks who maybe are regularly like at the playground would see that there's, I know people can see it through our social media, but how else is there?
There's the bulletin board
Is there a bulletin
there.
board that's
There's a
pretty-
bulletin board on the outside of the barn, where the sliding door
Towards
opens to
the
the playground.
You're right, and I never used that. That's a really
Yeah.
good point. Sometimes we make a banner. We
Right.
made a banner for the
Okay.
pollinator count. I can talk about that in a second. We made a banner for that, and we put it out front, and the guys,
Okay.
post it
So
for
but
us.
maybe we should utilize that bulletin board, because I mean, even for the plant
a
exchange,
good
things
idea.
like that, if you're hanging out there, you can see it, right, that
Well,
there's
and the more
something.
stuff we put there, the more people will start.
Start to look
yeah.
for it if it's current, besides buying a banner or whatever you.
Yeah, because they're not cheap. So let me step back. On the 22nd and the 23rd, we did a pollinator count with the Great Southeast Pollinator Census. That's through the University of Georgia, but has spread out from Georgia onto the rest of the Southeast pretty much. And it's a citizen science project where you go out and kind of purposefully count pollinators on a particular plant for a particular amount of time. It's really easy to do. Little kids can do it. Everybody can do it. And then you send in all your results, and they use those for science projects. Trying to get baseline data on what plants attract what kind of bees or whatever. Anyway, it's a really easy thing to do. We've done it. I think this is the 3rd year. And we had about 22 people join us this time. And it was a lot of fun. We had perfect
22 in the
weather.
park? That's.
We had, at the park, I think we had more than half of those because we did 2 different locations. So, but most of them were at the Marvin Eford Park. And honestly, it was hard to count some of, it was so busy. It was so busy. It was just crazy with pollinators,
Oh,
I mean, not with people,
right there.
pollinators. It's just, they were moving around so much on some of the plants. It was amazing. That garden is just absolutely overrun with pollinators.
All right.
So that was fun.
All right, well, thank you, Christina, for keeping all the activities from the Habitat Builders. It's helping complement a lot of what we have here in the
That's
town.
the plan.
It does. Okay, Trails and Greenway report, Tyler here, anyone else?
We don't have anything for that.
Nothing, okay.
We still have them both.
Yes,
Still have trails and greenways.
Public Works report.
Matt will take this.
We got the village hall clean, completed, and as I spoke to you earlier, check one of those outlet meters because it looks dead already.
Yeah.
But,
Are you able to get a replacement if it is dead?
I'm not sure.
Because some plants are good for a year or whatever, depends on where you buy them.
Yeah, we got all these from site one, so I'll reach out to site one and find out.
Well, let's go see if it's dead, but yeah, yeah. If it's not dead now, it might be later.
That's all.
Cool.
Okay. We'll go save the Japanese maple after
Yes,
this.
go
We'll go
save
see
the
what's the status. Thanks, Matt. Okay, John, Village Council update.
Within Village Council at the last meeting, which was our work session, we did make some approvals for continuation of the Marvin Loop.
You guys, you discussed the
Yeah, and, you know, one thing that, you know, is a realization for, you know, all of the village of Marvin is that, you know, as we continue to get more into the business of handling some of the roads and roundabouts that, you know, are necessary to help keep the traffic flowing around here, it's going to be eating more and more of our budget. So, you know, when it comes to the greenways and things like that, you know, our main focus is continued to be kind of continuation of completing Marvin Loop. You know, that's probably the main area that we're, you know, really spending any money. So we will continue to incent developers as, you know, properties come online or developers come, you know, to implement either, you know, what makes sense from a greenway perspective or fee in lieu and stuff. But, you know, it is important to realize that, you know, as we've had to increase taxes over the last couple of years to pay for a lot of these things, you know, the appetite, you know, to have a lot of money just to go to the greenway trails and new ones that, you know, aren't already in the works. Because, you know, the challenge that we have, and we've actually won another grant, you know, that we've got to consider, okay, do we accept that grant now? Because there are matching monies involved and stuff like that. And while it's great to get, you know, a $250,000 or a $500,000 grant, we always have to be responsible, you know, because there are matches typically associated with those, like there is with the roads and things like that too. And you know, if you don't see a lot of, you know, immediate, you know, opportunities for us creating new greenways or trails or things like that, you know, that's part of what we'll be facing as a village as we kind of move forward, just, you know, with, you know, making sure we're spending the monies responsibly.
I want to put a plug in about, I can't believe I'm going to say this, the tax rate here. Because I did a little study, because everybody got their tax bill, right? And then next door blew up. And then the guys from Jersey say, you don't know what you're talking about because this is nothing compared to living in New Jersey. It's nothing compared to living in Charlotte, Mecklenburg. Our tax rate per $100, I'm sure you know it off the top of your head, is 0.4895 per 100.
Wait,
In
what is
Charlotte-
that? No, ours in Marvin is 0.5.
5.6.
563.
Okay, 563, still 563. Okay, so in Charlotte, it's 0.7, let's just round up, 0.77 if you live in Charlotte and Mecklenburg, which everybody does.
I do.
If you go to, you would think that Gaston County might be too, I have family who live in Gaston County. If you live in Belmont, you pay $1 for every $100, $1 for every $100 of property value. And I mean, Belmont's lovely, but, you know, so if you do a little study around the area, wow, it's not bad at all. But to your point, we just need to remember the guy from New Jersey was right. And it's not just New Jersey. I mean, if you go across the line in Mecklenburg County, and your house will probably be even more expensive too. So anyway, it's not so bad. So we appreciate what you're doing with it.
Yeah. So John, you mentioned the Marvin Loop. So the council, as you said, that's the priority. What was approved or what was discussed in the last?
Well, we were looking over the budgets in terms of what we approved. Now, part of the new grant that we got is potentially for a piece of that.
Yes.
The next piece, which kind of runs, you know, further down. So, you know, and we've already had the public input meetings on the other piece, which kind of runs from Village Hall kind of all the way around
To Saddle Avenue.
to Saddle, yeah. And a couple of minor changes that we made in that it may not go all the way to Saddle.
You
know,
guys
we
did. You
discussed
guys
that.
did agreed to not do that. It's still gonna go. It's still gonna go that far down. You guys are just talking about funding sources.
Correct.
You guys switched it from concrete to asphalt to save $500,000 there.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yes, the
Yeah, the
concrete's that
difference
expensive.
between concrete and asphalt, and our feeling was that, you know, while we have had to do some maintenance recently, especially on the existing asphalt, that price difference was just way too much, you know, $500,000, you know, to go with the concrete. And there's other things with concrete as well. They've got the seams in them for the expansion joints.
Yeah.
Some people like the asphalt better. But,
I mean, for walking, I just don't see much difference, right? I mean, if.
Yeah,
for using it.
concrete does last longer, theoretically. But, with the way that we've seen our asphalt trails, which is most of the loop currently, we've really felt that, with the maintenance that we've done to it and what we plan on doing in the future, which is fog sealing it, every few years to extend the life of it. We have our public works team that pays good attention to it. If we have low-lying areas where water is just inundating it, we've been addressing those type things over the years. So we really thought that was an area that we could save some money, so.
The only other things you guys agreed to was looking to DOT to help cost fund a pedestrian crossing at Marvin Road. And portions of the loop would be either completed by developers or by a fee in lieu. That'd be for the Marvin Oaks property here and Marvin Grove on the other side. And that would be a cost savings together of another $500,000. So looking at around a cost savings of $1 million just with changes in the past week with contributions from existing developers, the approved projects.
The DOT for the crosswalks, is that Marvin Road, where that would be?
It would be kind of.
It's at Woodcliff.
Between Woodcliff and.
And it's right at
Innisbrook.
the
Kind
north
of
side.
right where
Okay.
Innisbrook and
Okay.
Woodcliff.
Because Woodcliff already has a little sidewalk there, so that would, the idea is you could then run the loop down Marvin Road to Joe Clark.
Yeah, because what we could do is we could use the DOT right-of-way on that Firethorn side, which would go down, and there's a couple of reasons for that. Number one, you're not crossing as many properties, individual properties and things like that. But also from an engineering perspective, the grade on that side of the street is higher, which is better for, putting a pathway, so.
But that part, running past Firethorn, that would be phase 3 essentially, and that's what we just got a grant, which is the Great Trail State Program. It's $491,925, 100% match. I know because I had to do the application for it. The council's not accepted that yet. They'll consider that their next meeting. We're still doing some research on all the obligations and what's going to be required, but that funding would at least be part of what we would need to do the final leg of the loop. So still a lot to figure out.
Okay, so that's the funding, but the funding for the previous part, is that, you do have approval for that then, John, is what you're saying? Or that's?
Yeah, the previous one, which is
That is
Village
still- that is
Hall
funded.
around, yeah,
Okay,
that
that-
one's already in the works.
Okay.
You guys have done all the engineering. I don't think you've awarded a construction contract yet.
No.
No.
But that's going to be for 2026 then, timeframe?
2026, 2027 roughly. It's just going to depend on funding. We may apply for shortfall funding with CRTPO, and we would apply for that next year.
And part of it is, especially with the grants and what folks need to realize is that oftentimes with grants, we have to put all the money up front and only then. So,
The reimbursements.
it's not always whether we have the money or not. Sometimes you have the money, but you have to have it at the right times, So, Jill does a great job in kind of earmarking, and keeping different accounts when necessary to make sure that we, are always taking care of our obligations and so forth. But, it's important to realize that sometimes it's just kind of a log jam, where, yeah, we may have the money and we could do it, but you have to have that money up front in order to be able to get reimbursed later.
But the grant that's going to be used for phase 2, we have enough time to use it? I mean, some of them are kind of constrained too, correct? That you
Yeah,
have to have it-
we're still on track.
Okay.
And that's also with the Village Hall Park as well, yeah.
This
So
one.
we're on track for those things, and we're monitoring that to
Okay.
make sure we stay on track.
Okay, great. Anything else, Sean? I did have an update from Chris on the wording for the Mike Cognac
Oh, yeah.
recognition too. But is there anything else on the council update that you had?
No.
Okay. So the wording that John proposed, we shared it last week. I shared it with Chris Cognac, and she was very touched by the way that you captured it, John, so appreciate that. And just had a little bit of feedback on some of the capitalization of some of the letters, the family, faithful man. But anyway, I can give you the details of that. But she and the family were very appreciative and look forward to seeing how that moves forward. So thank you for that.
Christine, you can email that
I'll
to
email you,
John.
yes, just a little bit of wording changes, but I think other than that, the intent was great. So
Sounds good.
with that idea then, is that when we do the Village Hall Park in the spring with the landscaping, is that the idea, John, that we'll try and target getting a plaque put in kind of in conjunction with the park being established? Is that, and do we need to look for funding for that? Or how are we going to cover it?
Yeah,
What I would say next is really you guys need to finalize. You jumped between a couple different ideas. I think you guys need to have the final discussion, decide, okay, we're doing a bench. We're going to do a freestanding plaque. We're going to put a plaque on a tree, whatever you want to do.
Okay.
I have to throw a tree joke in for Christina. You guys need to just finalize what form you want it to take, and then we can go from there.
Okay.
one other thing from the village council meeting was the veterans.
The Wounded Heroes Monument.
The
yeah.
Wounded Heroes Monument, they did kind of settle on some of the different designs that they, proposed for that, so
And then
that's kind of moving along as well.
And then you guys did approve the construction contract for Village Hall Park, so that's official, so.
Okay. Well, then, I'll bring that back to the October agenda item then, exactly, because I know a couple months ago, we shared the plaque, the bench, and we should come up with a recommendation for the October meeting, then that would go to council then, John, and then we can have that
Yeah.
incorporated with the timing of the garden. Now that we've got a better view of where everything's going to sit too, we could maybe
Now you can look at it.
we can make a
exactly where it
recommendation where that would be too, what part of the, but I think we saw, kind of tying it to the entry point of the
But
modern loop.
but for that next meeting, I'd recommend finalizing what form you want it to take, where you want it to be, because then
Then we can
staff can
approve
get quotes, and we can go through all of that. So kind of, give us your ideas, give it a stamp of approval, take it to council for their final say, and then we'll get the quotes and everything.
Okay, thanks. I want to do that before it gets ahead of us too, so. All right, that's it for the council report. Any action items we need to review? Austin?
For you guys, so you two are going to work on the plant exchange event. Other than that, Christina's going to send her final notes for the plantings to the board and to Tyler. So that's it.
And then the action item on the recommendation for the plaque purpose, the one we just talked
Yeah,
about?
we'll just have it on the next meeting.
Okay, gotcha. That's not an action. And then any open items that we need to review ongoing?
The only one that is pending was Hunter looking at, I think, the golf cart ordinance. That's low down on the totem pole right now. We got other things working on, but I'll get with him and we'll see if he can give an update either for the next meeting or one coming up in the next few months.
All right. And any final comments? Michael, Deb, Christina?
Nope.
No? Deb,
This was
anything?
so fun.
Yeah, good discussions today on laws of plant focus today. Appreciate the time. All right, with that, I make a motion to adjourn today's meeting
10:10.
at 10:10 this morning. All in favor? Okay, motion passed. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.